Hello again, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Three Bridges. So this will be the April update. Yeah, that sounds about right. So normally when I'm doing this hobby, it's sort of a pre-retirement, getting things sorted. But one of the main activities I want to do once I'm retired is I just do whatever I like on a daily basis for the hobby. I don't have a fixed plan or anything like that. I've got a rough plan where I would like to be by the end of the year, but that's about it. Anyway, April has gone a bit like work. I have a spreadsheet of tasks to do to get through this month, and I have doggedly stuck to them in the order they need to be done. So, yeah, but there is an end goal at the end to get the underground trains running to Harrow on the Hill. Anyway, here's how the month went. Hi, well, it's at end of week one, so what have I been up to? So down this end of the loft where my London station's going, no progress, so still need to get the other subframe in and all that junk and clear all. Next bit up, no progress. Get to Harrow on the Hill, so baseboards are in and I'm gluing cork at the back at the moment for East Coast West Coast line, and I've got all the points to finish Harrow on the Hill, so got those last weekend. Most of the work's been happening this end, so starting from the back, getting all the baseboards are in, fixed, and I've got cork on the back and track, and I've still got to do all the other track and everything else. So downstairs, still can't find the mic attachment. However, Harrow on the Hill station has started. These are glued onto the roof sections. This will come off separately. I've got the three structures in at this end, then there's a gap down to the stairs, so there's some seats and Randall signs to go in there. And this first one is now glued in position, so this will set the sort of reference point for all the others, and it will allow the tower to sit just at the end there. Update you more next week. Okay, quick tour of the loft end of week two. So this end I've got all the supporting frame work now all the way down the loft, so that's all finished. And I've moved one piece of open framework I've got made down to this end because that will fit there. Middle section, obviously, I'll come on to this a little bit, and then most of the work this week has been laying cork at this end and sorting out tracks. So position of the station's fine. I've started to look at where a bridge is going to go just south of Harrow on the Hill, so this is the template for it. All the tracks have to pass through it, and then all the points and the crossovers all have this here. That'll be in the future. And as I said, it's all gluing cork, touching track at this end, so just a bit of a bomb site of tools. But I'm getting there. Okay, so I just need to explain the slight change I've got to my open framework. This is how I normally have it. So I've got my support sort of framework underneath, and this basically takes the weight of everything else, and then my open framework spans across, and then I usually have the main part of the framework there, but it also gives me the opportunity to put some additional stuff down the front. So to give you an example, here I've got the main ocean board at the back sat on the open framework, and then this Ridgeboro line along the front here is sat on the front section in front of the roof beams. However, at this point here, I'm going to have the Marylebone station, and it's going to sort of span. Part of it's going to be this side, part of it will be that side, but behind it I will also have my East Coast West Coast line going down to my main London station, and I'm going to have the underground lines cutting through as well, and they're going to be dropping down. So what I'm going to do is, for this part of the layout, I will make the open framework effectively in two halves. So there'll be a back section which will have East Coast West Coast and the underground supporting it, and then there'll be a front section which has the Marylebone station. I basically need to slot it in from this side so that they go round the roof rafters. So it's a bit of a more complicated design. And the main change I've got here, the other advantage it gives me is that I can then remove the marrowbone station section, take it down to the garage, and then to work on my mechanical points and levers on the whole board in one go. And then I can bring the open framework back up with the baseboards on top and the points all fitted and the track all laid, and the mechanical rodding attached perfectly to the front of it, and then slot it into place. So I'll show you towards the end of the month when I've done it, but yeah, this is the main change to how I normally do my open framework and my baseboards. Okay, back in the garage, so getting towards the end of week 3, I think. Yeah, he's going to the Easter holidays, so away for Easter, won't get much done. So got a couple of days left to just try and do a lot of cutting. So as you'll have seen previously up in the loft, I finished all the support frameworks, and what I'm now starting to think about is those boards that fit down the London side. So if I try to explain with a very rough sketch, so 4 boards that I have to create. Okay, so this is the Harrow on the Hill one, which is already made, it's obviously up there, and I've got the open framework for the far end, which I've moved down, so that basically has my large London station that runs my Azumas and what have you, and there'll be a bit of a sort of entry throat I can put in behind. Haven't got any plans for that yet, that's very much next year, but I would just like to be able to get the tracks down to there so that I can temporarily run things up and down. And then what I'm thinking about at the moment is this middle section. So this is the section where my open framework is very different to what I normally build. So I normally build a very simple one. I'll show you again an image of that. This one's a bit more complicated. So I've got effectively what's going on here. You've got 3 things going on. So you've got the East Coast West line running just along the back. I've got my underground lines, there's 4 lines, and they need to now drop underneath the London boards and return round. So they've got to cut into the open framework so that they can incline down. And at the front, in front of where I normally have the main boards, I'm going to have the marrowbone station, just simply because I can't fit everything in this area. And again, for me, this is a sort of big part of my layout. It's the end of my journey from my sort of first 5-year-old, and a journey that I've made up to marrowbone for most of my life, actually, probably every year, one step or another. So in order to do the open framework, I've got a couple of changes that I have to make to what I do normally. So in terms of my support sort of B8 frames, as I call them, so this is what I'll cut out of the 20mm ply. This is the structure that supports all 3 decks ultimately. Still got 4 of these to make, and then that's me finished with these as well forever. So, but for the 2 that will support marrowbone, the frontal section needs to be much longer so that it can actually support a wider section here. So I'm just going to extend that out. So this is my template, I just draw around it. The only critical lines are these 3 lines here of the horizontals, because they affect where the 3 decks have to sit. The vertical ones that support it, they're not too critical. So marked it up, a mixture of jigsaw and track saw that one out, and then I'll do the other one. And then at the back of the sheet I usually get some of the long struts that make up the open framework, sort of 1.8 meters long. So that's that bit. And then in terms of the 2 frameworks, or I suppose 3 frameworks I've got to make. So if I zoom in, so this would be my normal one. It would normally just go across there. What I've actually got to do is make it such that the first part of the marrowbone board will slot in against it, and also inside here I've got inclines down, so I'm going to have to cut into support bars for the tracks to go down. So still need to think about that, but I can make up the main part of the framework and then sort out where the incline goes down later. The back half is probably more of a traditional framework that I tend to make, but again there's two lines here inclining down for the underground, ready to loop round. And then the big open framework I've got to make, this is all going to be in one piece, so it's going to be 3.6 meters long and about 40 centimeters wide, so it's about 1.5 foot wide. That's 3.6. It's about 20 feet long. Okay, and this will, I need to make this all in one piece because this is where I'm going to have my bell cranks and levers for my mechanical rodding for all my points as you come into Marylebone. So that's a challenge to get all that made up first, and then I need it such that I can basically detach this and put it back should I need extra access underneath this section. So effectively there's two drawings going on here. So this line here is basically this line here, and effectively that's one open framework, and then the green one is the second one. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me, but I'm sure I will have forgotten about something as I build it. Anyway, slightly different to what I normally build, so let's see how I get on. So just a quick update on week 2 downstairs, sorting out the Harrow on the Hill stations. So this is where I've just got to glue together everything I've previously made. So what I've done is basically the platforms are all joined together. The stairs down at the end are glued to the platforms, and then the roof section and these buildings are all glued together as one piece so that I can remove the roof sections, so that if at a later date I want to put lighting inside here, I can get access to it. And I've also fitted the glazing units to the top of the platforms. So that's everything that I'd previously made about 18 months ago, sort of assembled. Now that I'm in the final home and nothing would get damaged in transit because these were quite large. So what I've now got to work on is finishing off the last one of these. So I haven't got the glazing in and some of the coping stones around the top, so it's only an hour or so's work, and then I can start working on gluing that in position so that the main station building goes across. I can start working on that next, but that will be towards the end of this week, I think. So I'm just making a start on this back frame, this one here, where the underground lines come out of Harrow on the Hill. So because I know I've got to cut through here and here and over here for the undergrounds passing down, I'm just putting it all together with some shorter screws so I can take it up to the loft, just check the positionings are correct, and then cut the recesses, and then I'll put the whole thing together with sort of the 65mm screws. So again, so this is the start of week 3, definitely about that one. Okay, so away for Easter. I didn't have a 3 o'clock in the morning thought, but I sort of woke up at 6 and realised that in planning basically the Marylebone board, I hadn't allowed for the fact that the underground line also passes underneath it, having sort of looped round. So these are the lines, the red is the lines of the underground line. So 2 lines go sort of an up and a down, go underneath the backboards and will loop round, and they effectively come back under Marylebone Station. There's an underground station, and then they need to cut back through and up. And so I do also need, because I'm going to be lifting the main Marylebone Station board out to work on it, I need to have a little bit of a support frame underneath that will just hold the underground line that basically extends through from the board behind. So it's not a big change, but at least I spotted it before I went too far on building this next board behind, this one. So the image you just saw was the completion of this board. That's fine, I don't need to make any alterations to that. I can create all the supports off this one, and all I'm going to do, I remember back to an earlier episode of Peter's latest one where he's building the Sydney amazing layout build, and effectively he has these sort of structures where you basically just create some extra wood underneath to support. So I'll create a couple where basically it will allow the extra depth where I need to support the underground at the back as it's dropping down, so that the cross strut doesn't sort of collapse on itself or become too thin. And then there's another one I need to create where so this is coming from the back, so this is taking the back underground, and then there'll be an extra little thin strip, only 50mm wide instead of the usual 10, that will just hold the underground line as it passes underneath the Marylebone station. I think the easiest thing to do at this point is me just to build it, as I know what I want to do and it's probably getting quite complicated to explain to you. So I'll do that, and then hopefully next image will make sense. Morning, so it's Friday, so it's my day off work, so I get a lot more done today. So welcome back to Sawdust City. So that's drilling holes, and I've got the last of these struts made, so to support the main board at the back. That's where the underground cuts through, I suppose, the east end, and then it will loop back round, and then it goes under here, my west end, I suppose, underneath my Marylebone board. So these are the structures I create. So Marylebone will get supported partly by this part, and then raise up, so there's a gap for the underground to go through. Anyway, I'll get these back up into the loft, get the frames assembled up, and I need to decide what to do next. Actually, it's Friday, it's quite pleasant outside, but we're in for a mini heat wave next week, sort of 20 degrees. It's 20 degrees for Scotland, is pretty good, which is a perfect temperature to be laying track. So my focus for next week is to just get as much track in whilst the loft is nice and warm. So I may put building the Marylebone board on hold for a week, and I'm going to focus on getting the underground track as far as I can. Actually, it won't get the complete loop, that'll have to come later, but at least I should be able to get trains to Harrow on the Hill. My brain's not working this morning, and a little bit beyond, just to try it out. So that's the focus, yeah. So I'll update you. I've got both of the back frames now made. So that was the first one that you saw. The second one is also done. So now I'm working on the inclines down for my underground lines that sit in this section here. So there's 4 tracks that come out of Harrow on the Hill. They then go through a couple of points, as I showed on the previous one, I think. And then there's a crossover as well. So I've left the whole of this area clear of, there's no struts underneath, so that if I decide at a later day to put point motors in, I've got plenty of space. So that'll happen there. Put my first strut in here, so I've cut through. So I've measured up this board at, it's just over 2% incline. It basically, I need to drop 7 centimeters. What's a centimeter? An inch is 2.5, so it's roughly about 3 inches, just under 3 inches, over 2 meters, so 6 foot. And so I know that trains, my underground trains, are very happy with that. They can manage it. So that's the first one in. That becomes my reference point. I draw up a line, and basically I will just keep following that incline down. So that's the next section. So obviously, as you can see, it's getting narrower as well. So that's because it's come out where the width with the platforms as well. At that end, to get down to this end, it only needs to be quite narrower. and at this point 2 of the tracks are going to go straight and 2 are going to pass through this frame. So what I'm working on now is cutting out the next section of the frames, and I'll just keep working my way along till I get to that 7cm drop that I need so that my trains can happily pass underneath other baseboards, and basically, more importantly, can pass underneath the other tracks that will be above them. See how we get on. Okay, so I know I said doggedly stick to the spreadsheet, which I have been doing, actually, making good progress. Very low down on the list was get the return loop for the underground underneath the London board, and didn't really think I'd get to it, but having got so far that I could probably actually put the loop in, which would give me continuous running trains from Uxbridge, it felt like it was an opportunity not to be missed. So got out my first to fourth radius curve marker. That's that one there, isn't it? So I know that the little underground trains will do first and second radius curves, and you won't actually see this part anyway, so I'm not too bothered about that. So that's basically, I need to have one track going one way, one track going the other. So I need a 12cm 4-inch wide strip. So I realised that with these, so these are basically the offcuts that come out of when I make the B frames. I can basically chop them up. I can make the return end, at least anyway, in out of 2 pieces. Morning, so it's early Sunday. So I'll just explain what I've done to this last frame before we go back to the loft, put it in place, and then we'll do the end of the week roundup for week 3. Definitely got 1 week to go. Okay, so normally this was my sort of standard frame with the 4 struts across, and I've moved it down to the far end of the loft. This is where the main London station will sit at the back. And as I sort of introduced a little bit earlier, I realised that I could probably get the return loop in for the underground underneath here. So I'd started on that yesterday, and then in between feeding neighbours' chickens, gardening, painting a ceiling, I managed to get out here in short bursts just to cut through the various struts. So this is where my underground line, so I suppose what I'd call my East End London Underground line, will run through. So 2 tracks, there's sort of an up and a down, and they'll loop around this section. So I've made it wider, just so, and I'm going to get some standard first and second radius track in. It's too tight to bend around the flexi track. Also, you'll hear the clicking as it goes over the rail joiners. Actually, I do quite like the sound. So that comes then into here. So this is at the front. Obviously, my roof beams go through here, and I've got these extra struts on. So if you're thinking, I've made this section obviously along the front is made in the wider 18mm, just so it's got a bit more rigidity. I'm not too worried about the fact that this is quite a long strut, because my support structure comes through here, so effectively it will cantilever anyway off there on the front, so that'll give that some strength. Made this part wider, so normally I would have only had it 10 centimeters wide, so about 4 inches. Here it's about 15. The reason why is obviously I need to get some, I'm going to have another station in here, underground station. So my Marylebone underground station will be up there. There's a number of designs of underground stations that they use in London. Great news is London Underground, they basically redrew a lot of the stations, and you can access those plans. They're just very much sort of like a sketch plan, but they show you the layout, and there's different layouts of how. So this one's going to have where the platform comes down, the escalators come down in the middle, and the tracks are on either side. So if you're there's various stations in London that have that sort of design. So I've not got it set on any particular station. More of that in the months to come, but just to explain, that's why I've made it wider.
Anything else different on this one? There isn't really, no. So the only real issue I will have is obviously over this part, which will have my large London station, so about 6 tracks. I will also need to put the baseboards on, which means I won't be able to access the underground. This part will be obviously subterranean, and so I've left it so that I will be able to, if I have, hopefully never, but if I do have an unfortunate incident where the train stops and I basically have to get my hand in, obviously I can't take the main board off, but I will be able to get underneath, and I'm going to leave all this open, and I'm not going to put any retaining walls, so I'm just going to trust that my track work is fairly simple, the trains will behave, they won't fall off, not going to crash into each other, but I will be able to get in and extract rolling stock in the worst case scenario. Hope it never happens, but you never know.
Next one down, so this will be my straight to my London station. So I'll probably put some baseboard down over the open framework just to see where points might work out. I've got the sort of east end line there, I just need to put in a west end line, joining in with this one here. And then this is at the end of here on the hill. So these are my points where it divides into the 2 loops with 2 tracks going in different directions. And the back of the scene I'm planning to have this sort of old factory unit. It's a kit bash from a Scale Scenes kit. This is the first bridge at the end of here on the hill. So started building this back in Yorkshire and had to stop. I need to get all 6 lines through it. And then this brings us onto here on the hill, so I've just taken the location for where it will fit. It's looking okay at the moment. Still need to put in a board here. This is where the entrance goes. And I suddenly realised that the entrance goes there, and next to it is this structure. And when you put the 2 together, there literally is a millimetre between the 2 rafters. I'll show you in a bit. The phrase "more jam than Hartley's" came together because I didn't think it was going to fit. And then this is the building that's near here on the hill, sort of a modern office block built in the 80s. Looks quite tired today, and there's bigger modern buildings near it, but because I'm going to model, this is set early 80s because that's when I was sort of at uni, so 82 to 89, so at that time it was probably quite new. I've got the colouring wrong though, so it basically is a square, and so this is trying to show the angle going at the side. I need to make the other side darker. I've got sort of 2 light sides. Anyway, I'll play with that. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how the station's looking. Still got a bit more work to finish it off. And then at this end, it's just been laying cork this week. Whilst I've got a few minutes to stick a piece in. Haven't done any more track laying, but I'll get on with that next week.